Awesome. Perfect. Well, again, thank you. And Christine, you can go ahead and take it away.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's having a nice, rainy, kind of chilly day at home or in the office. When everybody hears the words tax title or tax sale or tax foreclosure or auction, it tends to be a negative thing. It doesn't always have to be, but it requires our attention. And hopefully, after we do this morning, you have a little bit of a better understanding of what it means and what we need to do to take care of it. So we're going to start out. Tax title is basically any property that the taxes go delinquent for a certain amount of time, and the treasurer has the ability to foreclose on the property for non-payment of taxes. When the treasurer does this, the treasurer is required by law to issue certain notices to anybody that may have an interest in the subject property. These notices could include a mortgage company, a lien holder, any interest of individuals, corporations, any types that might be in the chain. They don't always do the proper notification. And I'm going to give you one quick example, as in if John Smith owns a property and he stops paying his taxes for a few years and the treasurer starts the foreclosure process, well, and John Smith dies. Okay. So the treasurer must now serve proper notice to John Smith's estate. They might not know who the personal rep of his estate is, and so the proper notice might not be served. Because when notice is served, it gives the individual or the mortgage company or anybody with interest in the property the right to cure the delinquent taxes before they eventually lose it to the treasurer. So if these companies are served proper notice, and they do not respond, then eventually they've lost any right to that property because they received the proper notice and did nothing about it. So as the insurer, if you're an agent and you are going to list a property and you, in talking to Mr. Seller, he says, oh, I got this property off of, auction from the treasurer or the land bank. That's your first sign to say, okay, I need to get with my title company and find out what we're looking at on this property. Because what we're going to do as your title company and the insurer is we're going to go through the chain of title. We're going to decide who has an interest, company or individual or anybody with an interest. We're going to show those interests on the commitment. So we're going to make you aware. It could be 2 people in a mortgage company. It could be 1 person. It could be 5 people. It just depends. Each property is different. So once we determine who the interests are, or companies or individuals, then we'll have to decide which way to go to get those interests removed. First thing we would look at is FOIA. The FOIA package is the treasurer's package in which they have all of the proofs that they've served the notices. They've put notices in publication, like as in papers, to let people know. We will look through that package first to see if the interests we're showing on our commitment were properly served in that FOIA package. I'm going to tell you, most of the time, if there are complicated interests, meaning maybe more than one interest shown, most of the time the FOIA does not cure all the interests that we are concerned with. But it's our first thing to do because it's the most cost-effective and the most timely manner. So we want to go to that first and see what we can do off of that. Now, let's say that the FOIA doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and it doesn't eliminate the interest. We have a couple options now. The options are to quiet title, and that involves going to court and serving note. The court will serve notice to interested parties, and if they don't respond, then title will be quieted in your seller's name. Okay. Other options are a quick claim deed. Say that the interest of John Smith is out there and we need to eliminate it. We can have somebody run down that interest and see if they're willing to sign a quick claim deed. Well, now what we run into when we do something like that is now John Smith wants money in order to sign that quick claim deed because he knows we got him. If he doesn't, then we have to go through a lot of hoops to try and get his interest removed. So we do run into that. Other things are, we can try and reach out to the mortgage company and see if they'll issue a release. I have yet, in the 25 years, I have yet to have a mortgage company actually give us a release in one of these scenarios. Most of the time when a mortgage company is involved, it's either quiet title or the FOIA package, and that is it. So it's basically what we find and how we go about eliminating those interests, what proofs we need. So the important takeaway on that is when you have a seller and the seller says, oh, I got it from auction, I got it from the land bank, I got it from the treasurer, that's your first clue to get with us. Get with us, let us run that chain, let us find out what we're up against. And the sooner we do it, the faster we can get what we need accomplished. If we wait, we're kind of not utilizing the time we need to get things done, if that makes sense. I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions.
Sorry, I have a question. Real quick, so when you get the FOIA, is it possible that, say there's 3 interests out there and you get the FOIA, is it possible that that FOIA could eliminate one interest, but maybe not take care of the other 2?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I always, when we first decided to go the FOIA route, I always say there's no guarantees on this, because there really isn't. It's just hit or miss when we look at a FOIA. And I mean, the FOIAs are time consuming. There's a lot of documents in there, and we have to, match up addresses that they sent notices to. We have to Google, we have to match them up, see if they're, legit addresses, see if the people actually ever occupied those addresses. There's a lot of work into reviewing a FOIA. But sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. So that's kind of what we need to do. But going backwards, it's really important to get the title work started when you know you're involved with the property. And on the buy side too, if you have buyers that are interested in a property and you suspect that it might be part of acquired via tax sale or auction or any of that, reach out to us. Let's look at it. Let's take a quick peek. Let's see how involved it's going to be, so you can educate your buyers as well. Let's go for a hypothetical. Let's say the FOIA doesn't work and we have to go the quiet title route, which involves reaching out to a property attorney, and the property attorney has to compile the information, and they have to file, court proceedings, and they have to get on the court docket. I mean, we could be looking at turn times of a couple months, depending on the county and the court. Like Wayne County, I know to get on the docket, for a quiet title action, it can take probably upwards. Let me see what we have for Wayne County. Wayne County can take 3 to 5 months. So your buyer might not want to hang around for that.
Hey, Christine, Kelly put a question in the chat. What's the time limit for the parties that have interest to respond to the notices?
Let me look that up. They have...
It's a great question.
Parties that have interest. Yeah, great question. So the parties that have interest in the property and are notified that the property is subject to forfeiture or foreclosure have 90 days to respond to the notices. Now, what we see, and there's multiple notices that go out too. I want to make you aware of that. This is a couple-year process. So multiple notices go out when the forfeiture process starts to where the foreclosure proceedings actually occur. So they have 90-day response for each notice. And this happens over roughly a 2-year period. So it can get ugly in there too. It can get, if I own a property, let's go scenario. If I own a property and I stop paying my taxes, and I know I stopped because I'm getting these notices that I'm delinquent, and I'm like, oh, throw the notice in the, in the garbage. But my girlfriend wants the property. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to quit claim the property to my girlfriend. Quit claim, right? So that means it's not insured, and I can just quit claim the property to my girlfriend. Well, now that I did that, my girlfriend should be served notices as well that the taxes are delinquent on that property. So now I'm trying to keep this so it goes in a chronological order. So now when I'm running title on that property, I'm going to show my interest and my girlfriend's interest because I just added her into the chain. Does that make sense? How I'm saying that? Does that make sense? Okay, good. So it's tricky on the notices that are sent out by the treasurer that are included in the FOIA package. It can include, I've seen properties that I had 11 people interested on there, 11 different interests on these properties. So when I'm going through the FOIA, I'm like, oh man, they only served notice to 3 of these people. So we cleared 3 people, but then we had 8 more we still had to worry about. They ended up quieting title and everything ended up proceeding like how it should be. So yeah, that's basically, the takeaways from this is very important. If you have a seller that has acquired the property via auction, tax sale, treasurer, any type of things like that, that's your red flag to get in touch with us. Let us run that property. Let's see what we're up against. Vice versa on the buyer. You get any inkling, that the property that your buyer is interested in might have been acquired that way, get in touch with us. Let's look at the property. Let's see what we're up against. You can educate your buyer. You can also educate your seller. Mr. Seller, this is what we're going to have to do for you to sell your property. And then you guys can, contact us. We'll be glad to help you, glad to answer questions, glad to talk to your seller too, and let them know why, the whys in the house. And we also work with a really great attorney firm that I've worked with them for, it's probably 15 years. And they do a lot of these. It's pretty much a lot of what they do. And we send them, we can give that referral to you as well. And your clients can choose to use that company for quiet title. And this law firm also assists where, I spoke about the quitclaim deed before. If we could track down the person with the interest, this law firm will help you track them down and even facilitate, getting them to sign their interest over so we can proceed. I've had them do a number of those. It's a good law firm. It's Lionel and Associates. And we work well together. It's a smooth process. So we would turn over our commitment and the supporting documents that they would need to write up their argument for quiet title for the courts. And it's worked out really good. And once a quiet title is issued, the court will issue the final quiet title judgment. That judgment gets recorded against on the property. So that way the issues are taken care of and they're not going to come up again. That quiet title eliminates those interests. So let me talk a little bit about what happens when the seller doesn't want to do any of this. I just want to sell my property. I don't want to pay for a FOIA review. I don't want to hire an attorney. I don't want to track these people down. It's only a $15,000 property. This is going to cost me. It's not worth it, right? That makes sense. I would advise highly against that as an agent, because what they're doing, and Amanda used this expression the other day, is kicking the can. They're just passing, the issues aren't going to go away because they just decided to quitclaim the property and not have the property insured. They're just going to go on to the next person. And then next person's going to have to deal with that. And a property that has these interests on it cannot be mortgaged until these interests are taken care of. So you have a buyer that comes in that wants to get a mortgage on the property. That mortgage company is not gonna give you money against the property with all those interests unless they were taken care of. So as an agent, because that happens a lot, the seller's like, well, we're not gonna insure this transaction. I'm just gonna quitclaim it to the buyer. But in essence, the buyer is just taking on all the problems, and the seller gets to walk away.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to chime in on that one too, Christine. You're exactly right. I see it a lot where the seller does say, hey, listen, exact scenario. A lot of times in the city of Detroit, it's this lower priced property. As long as the buyer is aware of what they're getting themselves into and is maybe willing to, okay, I'm getting this property for a good deal, maybe because it can't be insured and they're not going to get a policy, they negotiate maybe something in the price a little bit. And if the buyer acknowledges and says, hey, I get it, you need to sell this, I want it, I'll buy the property quitclaim deed from you uninsured, and then I'll take care of going and quieting title. So as long as there's that full disclosure, and if you're involved in any capacity as an agent, as long as you know that, okay, Amanda, can you do this quitclaim deed for us? We're just gonna, quitclaim the property to the buyer. As long as the buyer knows what they're getting themselves into and is kind of taking on the responsibility to quiet it themselves, then that's perfectly fine. Of course, we won't insure it, but it can still be a transfer of property if everybody knows what's going on. The dangerous bit is when, an unknowing buyer maybe takes a quitclaim deed, maybe doesn't know any better, thinks they want to throw their hat in the ring with investing in some properties, and buys a whole set of problems. then they figure out what the problems are, and they want to go back to that seller and anybody else that might have been involved to say, hey, wait a minute, you duped me, kind of a thing. So that's the dangerous bit there.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. That's definitely good info on that end, and that's true. Is, full disclosure, obviously we all know that full disclosure is always key, in certain scenarios. So yeah, if your buyer is aware of and willing to take on the responsibilities, then obviously go for it. Just as long as they know they're not going to go away until handled. To me, that's pretty much what I have on tax title. I like to do more of a question and answer because I can sit here and talk away for you guys, but I'm sure you guys have questions about this. So let's do a question and answer if we can. Does anybody have any questions?
How much does it cost to quiet title?
Well, from Lionel and Associates, we do have like a starting little price sheet, and it starts at about $1,250 plus additional costs. That cost includes the marketable title through an uncontested legal action. If the legal action is contested, there could be additional fees, which will require litigation. And what we mean by contested is, we have a couple interests showing, and Lionel and Associates reaches out to the court. The court then serves proper notice to those interests, and somebody says, yeah, wait, that's my property. No, you can't have it. No, they didn't serve me proper notice and wants to fight it and get their property back. That will incur additional costs. I've rarely found that happens, but it can happen. We don't want to rule it out. So that would incur additional costs as well. So roughly starting at $1,250 and up from there, depending on how complex, how time involved, and how many interests you're eliminating and chasing after. And like I said earlier, the turn time on something like this, it can be quickly. And what I mean by quick, it could happen in a month. It's possible. I would definitely plan on longer. I always like to give the 3 to 5 month range on that, just to give a cushion, because it really depends. If you have one in Oakland and you're doing like Pontiac, or you have one in Macomb, which is, in Warren, or, a Detroit property, it all depends on the courts. It depends on how fast you can get on the docket, how quickly, notices can be served from all of those ends. So that's pretty much what it depends on. So it can be costly, but in essence, like Amanda and Sarah and I were talking about this the other day, if you buy a property from tax foreclosure for $5,000 and you're going to turn around in 6 months and you're going to sell it for $100,000, there's a reason for that. It's not going to be easy. And this is why, when the treasurer deeds the property to somebody or you win it at auction, they're not pulling title work. They're not taking care of any issues, and they're not insuring it. The fine print's going to tell you this is an as-is sale. And there's a reason you're getting it for $5,000 or for $10,000. That's why it's your risk. And so it's great. And a lot of people can turn these properties around and make a really nice profit and make the property nice again, because usually a lot of them are abandoned, and they can make the property nice again, but there's going to be some costs, incurred with that. And there's going to be, some legwork that needs to be done, but it's worth it.
One more thing I want to add to that is that I don't think the county, at least in Wayne County for sure, which is where I've operated mostly and during my career, but the county doesn't do a good enough job of educating the people who are purchasing the taxes. So I've had many conversations with sellers who, they get a search, and then I'm talking to the seller explaining this is tax title, and they're like, no, I've got a deed from the county. They just feel like because it's from the county, because it's from the government, they feel like it's ironclad. And I'm like, they just wanted their money back.
I was just going to say that all the county wants is some of their money. They want some of that recouped.
Money. They don't care who pays them the money. They don't want that on their books. So, but they don't do a good enough job of educating, I don't think, the buyers. So like Christine said, there are some people who do this and they've got it down to a science. They kind of have their recipe set. They know they're buying tax title. They already, before they buy it, they've probably already ran a search, with a company, a title company, to see what exactly they're buying, to figure out how much gravy. after they go through quiet title, they've got a relationship with the law firm, and this is kind of, they found a little niche for themselves. But that would be, more rare. Usually it's like Christine said, somebody thinks this is great, it's a great deal, I'm going to buy this property for $5,000. And again, the county just doesn't do a good enough job of letting you know kind of what you're getting yourself into. So.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Amanda. I'll touch a little bit on the investor. I do have one investor, and he's very smart, he's very savvy, and he educates himself prior to buying any of these properties. So if he sees some tax sale properties going up for auction and he's interested in them, he will actually reach out to me. We'll take a quick look at the properties, and I'll tell him how complicated the properties are with the interest before he makes his decision whether or not to invest on that property. So, I mean, knowledge is always power. So he already knows, before he even tries to bid on it at auction, he already knows what he's getting himself into and what he's looking at in order to sell that property. So he works it into his investor costs. He knows that, if he really wants this property and there's 5 interests on it, and he knows he's going to have to quiet title on those interests, he educates himself financially that says, okay, I'm probably going to have to spend, $1,500 to get this taken care of. So is this property worth it? So if you have investors that want to do that as well, I mean, obviously we're here to help you out too. We can take a quick peek if they want to know what they're getting themselves into before they bid on it. We can definitely do that for your clients as well.
And also if they have a hunch that it's only going to be one person, 2 people, and you want us to pull the FOIA on it, there is an upfront cost for that as well. So even for just us to do it without getting the attorneys involved, it's a $450 upfront fee because we have to get in touch with them. There's so many people that need to be notified. There's so much that goes into it. So regardless, if you hear, where was that slide there? If you hear any of these here, tax title, auction, sheriff's sale, sheriff's deed, foreclosure, if you hear any of these words, that should be an automatic trigger to you. Like, oh boy, this is tax title. We definitely need to talk to the title company right away.
Yeah. And anytime you run into these, I want you guys to understand, anytime you run into this situation or you're unsure, don't hesitate to reach out to the team. We're all here to support you. And the more we can help you communicate with your clients, the better off we all are, to be honest with you. And, we'll help you instill that, confidence with your clients and all of that. So please reach out. Don't hesitate. That's what we're here for.
Have you ever seen anything after quiet title action where somebody comes back and tried to get it back? I mean, I know as soon as that's done, it's over with, but has anybody tried to fight it or that you've heard?
No, not after it's been issued. After the quiet title judgment is issued, nobody has come back, and not that I've seen or heard. It's pretty much like a done deal at that point, because once title is quieted, even if they tried to come back, there would have to be some serious errors made all the way through the process for this person to have any right to do anything.
Yeah.
Quiet title, I always think of it as like a reset button. It's like a complete fresh start. It just kind of wipes away all the sins of the past on the property, right? It's anybody who used to, so let me get this straight. You stopped paying your taxes, you stopped paying your bills, you then vacate the property, abandon it, move to California, and then ignore every notice you receive, and then somehow you think you have a leg to stand on to come back and get it. Okay.
Yeah. Definitely. So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I was wondering, so like if you have, like say me and my sister own a property together, but they send out a notice, like we don't pay our taxes. So they send out a notice. I respond to the notice and I relinquish my rights to the property. But she responds to the notice and like goes forward and pays the taxes. Does it then become her property or is it still our property?
When you say you relinquish your rights.
Yeah, like I tell them, go ahead, foreclose on it. I don't care. Or maybe I just don't respond at all.
And she goes and pays the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You would not be eliminated because if you both hold title to the property, so it's Kelly and your sister will say on the deed, and you guys get the notice and you say, I'm not paying them. And she's like, I'll go pay them. The treasurer does not care who pays them as long as they get paid. So as long as you stayed on that deed and you didn't like deed the property to your sister, yes, you would still be entitled to the property, even though she's the one that paid them.
Okay.
Do we have anybody else that's curious about anything?
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you.
Raise your hands. Do you guys think you got a better understanding of what I was saying, or raise your hands if yes. Yeah. All right. Good. This is my first time doing this via Zoom. Usually I'm in the room and it's just, this is different. But I appreciate everybody coming on and hearing what we have to say.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, everybody. If you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with us. We're happy to help with whatever you need.
I've got one last question for the group. Does anybody have a closing happening this week at the end of the month? Anybody? Show of hands. Show of hands. Yes. Awesome. Happy month end closing. Hopefully yours went smooth. Is it over already?